Okay, welcome to those that have joined us here. If you're joining us still from home, we just finished a work session with the Planning Commission. We're through that now, and this is a regular meeting of the Poquoson City Council for March 26th. If we could all please rise, I'll lead you in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for the many blessings we have received in our city. As we move forward on the various issues this evening, guide us. As we serve the community in the coming days, strengthen us to do what is right, and Lord, we especially ask that we stay mindful of those in need. Tonight again, we ask for your blessing and presence, that it be felt by those who serve our country, as well as our public safety employees who serve our nation, our state, and our city. Guide and protect them and bring comfort to their families as they protect all of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I have a couple of special presentations, but council wants to consider a modification of the agenda for this evening. So, Councilman Green?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move that we add an agenda item under special presentations. This will be item number 3, and the title of that is Resolution Pertaining to School Safety.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we modify the agenda and add that under special presentations. So, Evie, keep me straight if I get going too far, okay?
Okay.
All right, questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Evie, please.
Certainly. Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Cannella,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
and Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mayor Hunt, the motion carried for 6-7 to nothing.
Okay, very well. All right, I have a couple of presentations to give this evening. Okay, I'm going to start this evening with a special presentation. And Johnny, would you come join me at the podium? For those that don't know Mr. Johnny Mercer, I don't know how you've lived in Poquoson without seeing him, but I would tell you, the gentleman before you has the distinct pleasure of having served as an officer of the law in multiple jurisdictions for 49 years. What a high honor. And as he helped the city of Poquoson during many of those years, we wanted to recognize Johnny. So we gave you a proclamation, Johnny. And this is in recognition and honor of Johnny R. Mercer, Deputy for the York Poquoson Sheriff's Department. And it says, whereas Johnny Mercer began his employment in the city of Newport News in 1969 and the York Poquoson Sheriff's Department in August of '98, and whereas Johnny Mercer retired February 28th of 2018 following a career spanning 49 years of dedicated public service. And whereas throughout his career, Johnny Mercer has been an outstanding deputy with the motorcycle patrol and a leader by example with his peers and in public in general. And whereas Johnny Mercer is a highly respected individual and is to be recognized and commended for his outstanding performance, dedication to his job, loyalty, and impeccable work ethic. And Johnny, thank you for what you've done for us.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and thank you for allowing us to share your story. I got one story from my chief just a few minutes ago. He said you taught him how to run radar.
I did.
I wouldn't, when he was just a pup.
But he was just tall.
Would you like to say something, Johnny?
I think of what a lot you said in the opening prayer really means a lot to me, and it is an honor to be a policeman. I've had this calling all my life since I was young and became a policeman, and That was my heart's desire, was to be a policeman. As soon as I turned 21, living in Newport News, I joined the Newport News Police Department. And there is a lot of truth that God has a plan for our lives. And I had the opportunity to move here in Poquoson back in 1985. And this is an outstanding city. And even my lieutenant here, he moved here and he was like 2 years old. And who would ever thought a little 2-year-old kid to be my supervisor for all these years? So he's taken me under his wing and really brought me through here in York County and also Poquoson. So I love Poquoson. I love York County. I love doing police work. And one final thing is, one of my father's Bible, I read this little notation that says, death does not end with a period, but with a comma. So I look at, as a policeman, as you on city council, whatever, it's a public servant that we do. It doesn't end just because we retire or if we get voted out or whatever. We continue on with our heart's desire of being a public servant and protecting the citizens of Poquoson and York County. So it's an honor, and I appreciate this, and I just appreciate it so much.
All right, thank you, Johnny. Do you want pictures with the 2-year-old back there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Come on up here, Lieutenant.
Come on,
Yeah,
Lieutenant.
and it's amazing, even my captain and even the sheriff of York, Poquoson, well, John's part. So anyway.
All right. Susan, would you come join us as well? And here's the one that did all the work, just so we know. All right. And I know council wants to shake your hand first. Yes, indeed. Go through. Thank you, sir. Okay, and another special presentation this evening. I have a proclamation to present to the Charles Paris chapter of the National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution. Ms. Poquoson, you and your team, would you come up? That's fine. That is absolutely fine. Okay, and this proclamation reads, whereas in February 1st, 2015, the Charles Paris chapter of National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution was recognized as a commemorative partner with the Department of Defense Vietnam War commemoration. And we honor the Vietnam War veterans, their families, and those who served with the support of the armed forces. And whereas March 29th, 2012, President Obama declared March 29th, 2012 as Vietnam Veterans Day. And whereas on March 28th, President Donald Trump signed the Vietnam Veterans Recognition Act of 2017, which amended the Title IV of the United States Code to encourage the flying of the American flag on the National Veterans Day every year on March 29th. Furthermore, the official flag of the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs acknowledged that due to the unpopularity of the war, veterans returning home were often met with disdain and did not receive support on the gratitude for their service. Therefore, I, W. Eugene Hunt Jr., Mayor of the City of Poquoson, hereby proclaim March 29th, 2018, and every March 29th thereafter, Vietnam Veterans Day in Poquoson, and I encourage all the citizens to observe this day by participating in any and all events to commemorate saying thank you to all Vietnam veterans in a variety of ways and by flying the American flag as appropriate. Ms. Pikaloff?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, I know you want to speak.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. As the mayor said, the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution has partnered with the United States of America Vietnam War 50th Anniversary Commemoration established by Congress in 2013 to thank and honor veterans of the Vietnam War for their service and sacrifice on behalf of the United States, and to thank and honor the families of these veterans. This is very important to many of the ladies of Charles Parish because we are the mothers, wives, daughters, sisters of many of these Vietnam veterans. The DAR was founded in 1899 with a simple mission, that of promoting historic preservation, education, and patriotism. The Ladies of Charles Parish chapter have supported projects and activities for over 45 years in this community as part of that mission. Support of active duty military and veterans has been a major focus for us and will continue to be so in the future. Thank you for recognizing this holiday.
You want to talk about the flag a little bit?
Margiana, you want to talk a little bit about the flag? Margiana Wissinger is our chair for commemorative events and for the Vietnam Veterans Commemorative.
Would you like to talk about the flag?
Yes, this was the flag that was sent to us by the National Committee when we signed for the entire, which is a period of about 7 years, commemorating the Vietnam War, because a lot of people felt it was never given the honor to the veterans, no matter how they view or they felt about the war. These were veterans who gave their lives and gave their time to our country. And so we very enthusiastically joined the committee to recognize these veterans and their families. This was the flag that we were issued at that time. Out of this grew, due to the president's influence, grew the desire to designate the Vietnam War veterans with a day that was their particular day. And March the 29th was chosen. There was a little bit of controversy between March the 29th and March the 30th. March the 29th was the day they left Vietnam. March the 30th was the day they returned home. And I guess after the politicians got it all sorted out, they decided that March the 29th would be the day that they would actually proclaim as the official day. Here in Poquoson, many of the local residents are in some way honoring the vets with something free, a discount, a free drink, or whatever they chose. But you'll see the posters around town. And we're immediately after this going to set up an exhibit in the library. The library has been wonderful on their initiative to pull Vietnam books and put on the wall behind us. And you'll see the proclamations and some material about the war, some pens you can pick up to give the veterans if you have a veteran from Vietnam that you feel wasn't honored. But there will be a little display in there. And Kiwanis is going to be flying our flags on Thursday, as they do for many holidays. So the city and all of y'all have been tremendously supportive. And thank you very much, Mayor, Council, for what you have done, and to the entire city. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Can we take the honor, and I do have a Vietnam veteran, I believe, on my council.
You do. He's a very special veteran
Yes.
He's a
to us.
very special
So-
veteran.
Actually, two? No, okay. But anyway, that being said, I have very important veterans on my council. Could we impose on you to fly that flag over City Hall on the 29th?
We'd love it if
would
you
be
did.
fabulous.
So,
That would be great.
Randy, can you oversee getting the flag, and
make it
we'll get
so.
it back to you through our Vietnam veteran there, Mr. Freeman, because
Okay.
we know that he's always with y'all.
What we were going to do, and we'll do it as you choose, we were going to tape it to the front of the display in the library.
No, we're
If
gonna
you
fly
want
it.
us to do that, then you can go get it, or we'll just give it to you and
We'll just
not
give it
put
to
it
you
in there.
afterwards. I think
Yep,
that'll be
that'll be great.
easier.
Okay,
But
whichever.
please do come by. There's pins and more information that we would like for you to have.
Okay.
Again, thank you so very
Thank y'all.
much to everybody.
There's also the way to get on the website. If you want to look up any Vietnam veteran whose name is on the wall in Washington DC, and my husband and I have looked up friends, and it's been a real blessing to see the memories that have been put on there by their families. So there is that website in our display if you want to pick up that address and look someone up. So,
thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, the next is a presentation from the National Weather Service in Wakefield, and Mr. Bill Schumer? Samuel? Yes, sir. Right here.
Mayor Hunt, City Manager Wheeler, members of the council, and citizens of Poquoson, I come representing the National Weather Service tonight and want to acknowledge that on February 27th, the city of Poquoson became one of the fairly large number of communities in Virginia that achieved storm-ready recognition. They now complete the entire peninsula from York and James City County all the way to the bay of communities that are storm-ready. Storm-ready's been around since 1999 as a result of a devastating flash flood out in the Fort Smith, Arkansas area, and the recognition is designed to acknowledge localities that are really doing three things. One is having multiple means of receiving information from the National Weather Service, particularly watches and warnings. Secondly, being able to monitor a variety of weather conditions, and we certainly have the entire gamut here in the Tidewater area of Virginia. And thirdly, be able to disseminate information out not only to their citizens, but first responders, et cetera. And so there's a fairly long application process. I think it took somewhere between 6 and 8 months for us to go through the process. But I want to formally recognize the city of Poquoson for becoming another storm-ready community. I have a plaque that I want to present to Chief Bryant. And as a part of this as well, there is a sign that you all are welcome to place wherever you would like to in the city that recognizes the city as a storm-ready community. So I just want to say congratulations. It's an honor to be here, and thank you all for the work that you have done, and thank you to Chief Bryant for the work that he does to help prepare and keep safe the citizens of the city of Poquoson.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Randy,
you.
You want to add something?
I could. Mr. Samler, every time we have a severe weather event, Mr. Samler and the people he works with, the National Weather Service, are briefing us on these regional conference calls. And I just want to take a moment to say, this is the first time I've appreciated, look forward to actually hearing your voice. Usually, even though the quality of your information is always outstanding, the reason for our conversations have always been concerning. So
That
it's
is
nice
true.
to see you in some other venue, sir.
Yes, it's a pleasure. Thank you. And it's an honor to be able to perform that service, not only for the city of Poquoson, but for all of the 66 jurisdictions that we have in Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you all, and congratulations.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now we're at item C3, which is a movement on a resolution. So, Councilman Green.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said, this is a resolution pertaining to school safety, and I'd be remiss if I didn't give some kudos to the originator. Councilman David Hucks had the original idea with input from our city manager and our school superintendent. I have drafted this resolution, and I hope that y'all will take action on it tonight. I'll do it in the form of a motion. I move that we approve a resolution directing the city manager to fund a school resource officer, SRO, for the Poquoson High School in the FY 2018-19 budget, and City Council appoint a committee to propose other actions to enhance Poquoson school safety. Section 1, that the city manager is hereby authorized to include the necessary funding for the Poquoson Police Department to employ a qualified SRO for Poquoson High School in FY 2018-19. Section 2, that the City Council hereby appoints an ad hoc committee to propose actions to ensure safety in Poquoson schools, notably PHS, Poquoson High School. Recommendations are to enhance and augment the SRO. This committee shall consist of the following: Councilman David Hucks is chairman. 1 member of Poquoson City staff appointed by the city manager. 1 member of the Poquoson School Board appointed by Chairman Carter. 1 member of the Poquoson School Administration familiar with existing safety measures appointed by the superintendent of Poquoson Schools. 1 member of the Poquoson High School staff, i.e. either teacher, guidance department person, or administrator, appointed by the teachers of the Poquoson High School. And finally, 1 member of the citizenry from the city of Poquoson, Mrs. Allison Fox. Section 3, the following are the responsibilities of this committee as a guide for action, but may be expanded as they deem necessary. A, report back to the City Council no later than 30 April 2018, either in writing or during a retreat to include the committee members, City Council, and the school board. B, provide specific actions to be taken by City Council or the school board to increase school safety and enhance the effectiveness of the SRO. Section 4, that this resolution shall become effective immediately upon adoption.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded that we approve this resolution, so I'll open up for questions or comments by council. Go ahead.
I'd just like to say SRO is a national program and is at bunches of schools around, so we have plenty of examples. But rather than what maybe works very well for New York, Chicago, or somewhere, I'd like for our committee to really look at getting something that works very well for us here in Poquoson. And I don't know what kind of modifications that would be, but at least look very, very closely at that, and I'm sure Councilman Hucks will be happy to do that.
Okay, other comments?
I'm very pleased to see this. I did have a question. It says city staff, and I don't see any mention of the police department. I mean, this would be a police position. Would the city staff person be somebody from the police department, and or would it be important to have somebody there as part of the committee?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
My inclination, and he knows this is coming, is to appoint the assistant city manager. If the committee needs support in any way from the Poquoson Police Department or from any other member of the city staff, they will get it as part of their work. I certainly have no objection to adding somebody specific to the committee, but whether you do or you don't, know that we will be there as a resource committee for everything that they need.
Okay. Also, I think this is a really important position. I think the committee is a great thing because I think it's important to have a plan, a really good SRO program in place, like Councilman Freeman said, that fits our city before we hire somebody. And this is a very important position to hire somebody that needs to have experience with working with juveniles. And I would just like to throw out there, it's important to me that if at some point we do get a second officer, especially, that one of those be a woman, because I think there are young women in our schools that may not feel comfortable going to an SRO officer that was a male, depending on what the issue is. So I would love to see both a male and a female SRO officer available in some extent to our schools. And also it says that we're going to include the necessary funding for that.
It's going in the budget.
So it's going in the budget, and we will talk about how that gets paid for at budget time? Okay.
Okay, anyone else?
Just make one more comment, if I may. I never thought that I would vote or that it would be necessary that we have to put an armed guard in our schools to protect our children. That's just a concept that I just can't hardly imagine. But, you know, our society has degenerated to the point that it appears that that is our only option. I just really hate to see that we have gotten to that point.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, I don't have any, so Evie, please.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
and Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, very well. All right, next item on the agenda is an audience for visitors. This is an opportunity for the public, if they would like to address any issue, now is that time. Just your name and your address for the record.
Okay.
Okay.
My name is Kara Catlett, and my address is 12 Woodland Road, Poquoson, Virginia. Good evening, Mayor Hunt and the members of the council. My name is Kara Catlett, and I first turned to Poquoson social media forums back in the beginning of February, voicing my concerns regarding our city's school safety and my curiosity if anyone else shared my concerns. As a Christian woman, I am now certain that this concern was laid on my heart for a greater purpose, for something much larger than to just sit home, do nothing, and worry. I've lived in Poquoson all my life, as many generations before me, and I take much pride in our city and the people that make it a community, and I will never leave it my own will. No matter the amount of pride I hold for my home, I do not let it blind me to thinking that we are immune to the ways of this wicked yet beautiful world. Parents, grandparents, students, teachers, school faculty, school administrators, and law enforcement officers have all reached out to me and shared their stories, their fears, and their concerns. The truth is, our children are being bullied, and they are bullying. They are buying and selling and using drugs in and out of your schools. They are committing and being victimized by sex crimes, and they are finding and writing threats on bathroom walls. Teachers and counselors that have reached out to me have a list of questionable students that they truly fear. They all believe an SRO could help. They all want what majority of Virginia schools already have, and that's an SRO in both middle and high school. This information has led me to push hard for SROs in our schools and additional security measures in the primary and elementary. It also has made so many of us aware of the need for something to fill the gap between counselors and teachers and law enforcement officers concerning mental health of your students. I've learned so much in this time sharing, planning ways for us as a community to express to you, our council, our concerns and needs. We all care about our children here in Poquoson, and we need to be a part of the solution and not the problem. We, as your community, are willing to take suggestions that you may need to help fit our needs. This road has not been easy for me, and it has not been all positive. I have been questioned and pulled aside. I have been accused of talking out of line, and even accused of being disrespectful by some. It is in my opinion I have been respectful, and I apologize if I have ever made any of you feel disrespected. I have reached out to my community and planned ways to discuss our concerns using social media because it reaches mass amounts from my own home. I was unaware reporters would follow all this social media as well, but I was excited to talk to Joe Fisher and today to Nico Clemens. They have been so wonderful in covering our passion. I'm thankful to them as well as to Thomas Cannella for sharing and being brave enough to speak out on what the community's concerns are. Still, I am baffled by so many things. I have had councilmen share with me and express their refusal to ever put an armed officer within its schools for their own personal reasons. But yet, you have officers here armed at these meetings. Why are our children not allowed that same protection? You state at our community meeting that I'm out of line addressing the council but not the school board. My plan to go straight to you was only because it is where we had heard it had been stopped in the past. And it seemed the most educated way, especially after Mayor Hunt, you denied Councilman Cannella's request to discuss this at the last meeting. Freedom of Information Act has provided some information in emails as well as people that have reached out and shared emails and there were other authorities in the city. And despite these comments and despite these emails that's been pointing fingers back and forth between the council and the mayor and the chief of police, I have kept silent and I have remained respectful. And despite requests to meet with media and papers since the story aired on the news, I've refused but only to speak to Joe Fisher and today to Nico Clemens. I feel in times that if there's an attempt to keep the title that we are the safest place to live. It seems times you're more worried about losing the safe status than the safety of our children and our faculty and our staff. And I think it's time to remember that times have changed. We know your plates are full. We know your budgets are tight and funds are limited. But this plea comes from your community, and it comes at a different time in this world than the last. I thank you, Mayor Hunt, for bringing this work session, and I thank you tonight for this addendum to your agenda. It is more important now than ever. Our world is changing. Just as parents are stewards within our homes, you and your council are stewards of our community. And as parents, we must provide our children's needs. Many times after doing so, there is little left for sharing, for shiny, pretty, state-of-the-art things. We want what's best for our children, as I know you do all as well. And we beg you to consider the best ways to use the money available to you. There's mention of this $20-some million loan for school improvements. Could we cut that? Could we move money around? Could we, as a community, in some way help? They say that money talks. Some say money is the root to all evil. I believe that it's not money itself that's the problem, but our attitude to that money, and that it can be used selfishly or for God's glory and for the blessing of others. What we do with money available to us reflects our values and it reflects our character. And I ask you to think long and hard on our request for not one, but for 2 resource officers, one in the high school and one in the middle school. I talk to those working within your schools and and at your police stations. Speak to the ones that you don't know. Go sit in the school and talk to the students. I have learned through all of this that your community and public servants within your schools and police stations are afraid to speak out. Parents are uncomfortable with this discussion. They're all for it, but they are fearful to speak, and they have shared their fears for repercussions, fears for their job. You may not want to believe it, as it was hard for me to hear time and time again, but it is the truth, and it is the sad truth. So here tonight I stand, a mother before the mayor and his council, with nothing more to offer than a small seed planted in my heart by my Heavenly Father. And I have stepped out of my comfort zone, and I am doing so. In doing so, I have discovered more strength, more restraint, more passion, and more secrets than I ever knew I or this community could ever hold. And I ask you all tonight to put money and politics and arrogance and power and pride aside and put people and our children first. I pray that this can stop at this work session, and I pray we will not need the media or reporters or petitions and such to push forward. I pray that you grant us 2 SROs and any other measure that you feel to do so to protect our community and our children and stand for what is right. Because I have at times questioned, but I have not yet lost faith in you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, anyone else?
I was going to say, can we fix the mic before the next speaker? It stopped working.
Battery died? Bob, do we have an additional microphone? Hold on one second.
All right.
I don't think so. The lady that's just up there, the lady that's just there, if you'll ask her.
What?
No, the lady,
What time?
Tanya.
Not ready, just use yourself at the podium if that's not working.
You can't disconnect us, but they can use this podium.
Okay.
She's
that
Tanya.
podium over there.
Tanya. She needs to know the clicker.
Oh, okay.
So how does it move?
Now, yeah, just, I know it's going to be difficult. Hey, you want to turn that podium to us
Is
a
it going to be
little
on
bit?
this computer?
Hey, Bob, can you help turn the podium to us a little bit? Quite a bit, actually.
Are you able to log in?
Where's Dana?
Yeah, log it in for. Now, Allison, we have your presentation in front of us.
Okay.
So you don't need to just present to council.
Okay.
And try and hit the high spots, because we do have it.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Do I need to say my name and everything for the record?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. My name is Allison Fox, and my address is 4 G. Maria Drive. So I want to start out by saying thank you so much for including a position in the budget. Half of this stuff is really not relevant now, and my husband thanks you because when I asked him to look over it, he said, "Oh my God, death by PowerPoint." So I'm sparing you guys a lot tonight. I do want to talk about how we're going to pay for this, though. So I'm going to skip over what a resource officer is, a sworn officer, what an SRO program would look like. We'll talk about that in the committee. But paying for it is really the issue now.
Ms. Fox, we're having some AV problems, so if you could give us a minute.
Okay. It's on me. Is it this side right here?
There we go, yeah. Here we go. All right, let's get you back to the beginning. So you're, hold on. Okay, thank you. There you go.
So again, I wanted to thank you. I know it takes a lot of courage to change your mind about something that's so public. I know a lot of you were against an SRO program for quite some time, and I appreciate you guys having the character to change your minds and vote for something so important. So initially, my goal was to have a school resource officer program implemented, and it sounds like that's what's going to happen, so I appreciate that. I did create a list of objectives, which would define an SRO, talk about SECURE, which is a rubric set forth by the Departments of Education and Justice. I talked about what an SRO program would look like, so for, I guess for the audience, I could just tell them so they don't have a good understanding of what it is. So an SRO program is a joint effort between the police department and the schools. It's a collaborative effort, and MOUs need to be set forth before a program starts. So an SRO needs to have clear and defined understanding of what their role is. So if you think about a police officer in the school, I know a lot of people talk about criminalizing our youth. That's not their role. Their role is not to criminalize the youth. If a child comes in with a marijuana leaf on his shirt, that is not a police problem, that's an administration problem. So that's what I'm seeking, and that's what my fellow citizens are seeking when we're talking about an SRO program. Some of the daily duties of a SRO might be to do perimeter checks, gather intel. They teach our kids about cyberbullying, sexting, human trafficking. Believe it or not, that stuff does happen around here. They're present during lunch duty. They conduct investigations, collect evidence. They can deal with traffic concerns, and they implement crime prevention programs. So essentially, as Sheriff Diggs has stated previously, they're a teacher, counselor, and a role model all in one. The reason we want this, we as the community, the faculty has been very vocal to myself and some of my other friends about wanting this program. They've had a lot of issues at the high school that people don't really know about. So these are just some quotes and speaking to them. One person said, "I see the possibilities and positive things that come from an SRO in school. Some of our students are going to meet an officer one way or another. I'd rather it be positive." So this is a really great thing that you guys are doing. Our children are victims and they're bullies. There is a lot of drug sales, sex assault, victim shaming, attempted suicides that are going on in our schools that people really don't know about. We don't talk about it. These are additional quotes, and you guys have my presentation. But the stats are there to support a program. So between 1994 and 2009, which is the time period that school resource officer programs became really prevalent, the juvenile arrests and certain criteria actually fell nearly 50%. So there's a lot of benefits to this. Sheriff Diggs wants it. Chief Bowen stated publicly that he would support it, and our school board wants it. So all of these people, thank you. Research suggests that it's the best practice. And just to reiterate why now, we have talked about this as a community since 1999 after Columbine. That's when SROs really became prevalent out here. And at the time, there was, in an interview with retired PHF staff, she told me that people didn't want it because they didn't want that look for Poquoson, because essentially people had the mindset that if there's a police officer in the school that we're not safe. And we know that now that's not true, because it just puts a bullseye on our back. And these are just quotes from minutes of 2008 when, and that's a typo, it's actually 2008, when we started talking about it again, and Lieutenant Deaver actually has SRO training and crisis management training, and he's done a lot behind the scenes to promote an SRO program. Mayor Hunt actually asked to think about alternatives to an SRO program, because he really didn't want this to be a knee-jerk reaction, which I would submit to you that it's not a knee-jerk reaction. We have talked about it for quite some time, but in an effort to best move forward, he did want us to talk about alternatives. So one alternative would be to do nothing at all, because people think that we're criminalizing children, which just simply isn't true, and the data doesn't support that. That's a false narrative. To continue with the police liaison program, this, in my opinion, is irresponsible and endangers the lives of the community, students, and other officers. The current program, the way it is taking an officer away from the shifts that are already critically staffed. It has not worked in the past, and it's not going to work in the future. Somebody mentioned the extra duty model, which is what New Horizons does, and that would be an officer working his 40 hours and then signing up for overtime. You would have the same problems here that you would have with a police liaison. These officers have worked 40 hours. You're placing taxed officers in a specialty position, and I quite frankly think that's reckless, because you're working with juveniles who have special needs. You can't have a conservator of the peace. Security officers, I think we could do this in collaboration with an SRO program. I think that would be wise, but I don't think security officers alone would fit the mold for what we need. Colonial Services was talked about back in 2008, and they offer wonderful services: substance abuse, violence protection, interagency collaboration, but the problem is that they're not consistently present and they're not law enforcement. So I would just suggest that it could be considered in addition to the SRO program, but not by itself. So this is what I really wanted to talk about. How do we pay for this? Because that seems to be the big problem here. So there are several grants out there, and Lieutenant Deaver, I think, is probably the expert on this, but we have grants available. They've been available for quite some time. But possible other sources of income could be asset forfeitures, to reinstate the boat tax, and before everybody jumps on me, we're just talking about things, okay? I did put a poll on Facebook. It did not go so well. We could increase property tax. Again, I'm typically fiscally conservative. I'm never really a proponent of increasing taxes, but I think this is something that would warrant it. Cuts and reappropriations, and federal and state supplements. We could talk about the city's capital improvement plan. So I read that it might increase 8 cents for every $100, and I spoke with Councilman Freeman, who stated that it only takes 1 cent to raise $150,000 per year. According to the Director of Finance, one full-time officer making $40,000 a year, yes, that's what they make, it's pretty sad, with all of the benefits and everything included, less the initial expenses, which would be a car or something like that, would be $55,000 a year. That includes the salary, FICA, health, life, VRS, and workers' comp. So if you're looking at this and you want 2 officers, I really don't think that's an unattainable goal. The proposals for renovation, from what I've read, ranged from $5 million to $31 million. That's an enormous difference, in my opinion. And I'm just wondering if we can trim any of those costs. And I'm not saying to use the loan for paying for an officer, but perhaps we leave the increase the same and not borrow as much. I have not talked to Chief Bowen about any of this, so this is me, this is not him. It cannot come from the police department. It can't. Not right now. I think it needs to be new positions added to the police department. I don't think it's responsible to take anybody that's already there. So there are 4 shifts. According to my research, there are 4 shifts, and they work 12 hours per shift. And one shift includes 1 sergeant and 3.25 corporals and patrolmen. According to the city's financial plan that I found online, in 2016, there were over 15,000 calls for service. Calls for service do not include everything. That does not include arrest warrants or traffic stops or self-initiated activity. That is calls for service. So if you break it down, if you have a full shift, that's over 10 calls per officer per day. And we know that is actually more because several times they are required to send 2 officers depending on the type of call. They're never fully staffed. You have vacancies, illness, court, training. It can't come from existing positions. It just cannot. Then we talk about who we protect, and I don't think it's fair to say if we cannot secure 4 SROs that we shouldn't get any. I just think that's irresponsible. We need to look at right now where the needs lie. And according to just limited research, between February 14th of this year and March 13th, so 1 month, just in our area, there were 113 school threats in the Hampton Roads area. So there were 27 high schools involved, 29 middle schools, 10 elementary, and 5 alternative. So if you're looking at where the problems lie, I'm saying they're lying in the middle school and high school. That doesn't mean there's not threats with the little kids, because there are. But if we're getting 2, that's where they need to go. And I just wanted to address some of the naysayers. Again, I'm so thankful that council has decided to go forward with this program. But to everybody else out there that they're kind of naysayers about it, they want to say Parkland had an SRO and that didn't stop the shooting. Well, Maryland did. We cannot let the inaction of one influence our judgment of all. Just because an SRO is in the school does not mean he or she will be there when a shooting occurs, and that's true. But it's better to have a fighting chance than none at all. And Mayor Hunt did talk about the response time being 2 minutes. I'm not convinced the response time for officers to respond to the call as schools are accurate, because they could be on other calls, they could be in the middle of a fight, they could be in the restroom, they could have suspects in custody. So I don't think the 2 minutes is actually realistic. But if it is, the 911 calls at Parkland came in at 2:23. The shooter stopped at 2:25 by his own accord, not because of law enforcement. And in 2 minutes, 17 students were dead. The Maryland SRO engaged the shooter in less than 60 seconds. It doesn't mean just because you have an SRO that he will be there, but wouldn't you rather have one just in case? I think the lives of our children are worth it. And I want you all to think about your family and friends. Mr. Green, I don't know if you know this, but your grandchildren are like my own children. And Brianna and Bodie, I love them so much, so I had to put their pictures up here. Bodie and Joey, that's my middle child on the left, and Mr. Green's grandson is on the right. And then that's me and Brianna. Beautiful kids. So just think about your friends and your family and your children when you're saying that you don't support a program. And my 3 children, Tyler, he's in 10th grade. Joey is in 5th grade, so he'll be in middle school next year. And Emily is 3. She will be in school in about a year and a half. And then this is just another picture of me in a car full of other kids. And the point of putting this on there, Bodie's in that one too, if you see his head back there. Even if you don't have kids in the school, you have friends that do. Their lives are just as important. So I want to conclude by saying an SRO program is not just about school shootings. This is about prevention, intervention, deterrence, bridging gaps, making our own community, community better overall. In 2008, Chief Bowen said, "This is not a panacea. An SRO program will not solve all of our problems," and I bet you if you asked him today, he would agree. But following the secure rubric and picking the right SRO, it is the best chance we have to make our schools and community a better place. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, anyone else like to address council?
Karen.
Oh,
I know. Karen Curtis of 99 Sandy Bay, here in Poquoson. I don't know how to follow those two. I'm here about that daggone grant. It's the time of Isabel, of course, all of us faced a lot of hardship, to include insurances having the wrong software, blah, 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 on and on. I'm sure those that were here know that story.
You're talking about the home elevation grants.
Right.
Is that
The
right?
CBDG, I'm all nervous now.
Okay. Community Block Development Grant.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And so we were so grateful when the city reached out to us to help us compensate while still in the process of elevating. I was granted $20,000, which I was, of course, extremely grateful for. Didn't know the money still existed till January of this year. So it's been very weak in the communication between the state and myself, extremely weak. One conversation, no documentation, presentation, whatever. But I just cannot wrap my head around the possibility of that money not helping us, who did do all the things that we were required to do at that time, and all the insurances and et cetera, and it has to be Isabel related. I just cannot agree with the repair of the ditch or whatever's going on by McDonald's. I wish it could somehow be, if we cannot still receive it, focused on Little Florida Avenue. I mean, now we have a better fire department, not better, excuse me, another one. And when the water comes up, the ditch is covered, the road's covered, you can't tell where the road stops, ends. And of course, we know the Little Florida is a little bit risky to begin with. If there was some way that we could show documentation that it was Isabel related, that we need to repair that road, and if it takes more money, maybe add money to that money to work on that road, I would feel a lot better at the loss I'm getting to know that we could help somebody else and the safety of the community.
Okay, thank you.
Did that work?
Yeah, that's good. Randy, will you be addressing that when we get to that item? What the state requirements are? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, anyone else?
Hi, my name is George Ford. I live at 8 Elm Street in the city. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Southall, Mr. Freeman, Mr. Green for the meeting last Sunday night that you came out to regarding security and safety, and accepting my apology. After the last city council meeting, I'll admit my temper got the best of me. So I'll say, after what you brought up tonight, it tempered my presentation here tonight a little bit. I really appreciate you bringing up and starting this committee, and Mr. Cannella for starting this a couple weeks ago. So we blame it on you. First time I ever spoke to City Council was January of 13, and it was about school shootings right after Sandy Hook. The demographics of our city, compared to the majority of the shootings nationwide, reflect one another like a carbon copy. We have issues in our school, whether we want to admit them or not. The first thing I want to say is thank you to City Council or School Board for putting out a formal request for an SRO in our schools. I don't think one's enough. I think it's two. The other thing that impressed me with the school board meeting the other night is their Lunch with a Friend program that they're trying to roll out and will start next year. If you're not familiar with it, I challenge you to get online and Google it. It's an amazing program that's going to include a lot of kids that are overlooked, sitting by themselves at lunches every day. We have bullying issues at our school, and I think that's going to make a major impact to it. I agree that SROs in our school are expensive. They cost a lot of money. We're on a tight budget in a small town like this. We have to look at other grant opportunities. I'm sure you guys are all aware from an email I received on Monday of last week that I did a Freedom of Information request for all the information around school security, SROs, and so forth. Out of all that I found in 3 years, the first thing that was on top that really concerned me was no council meeting minutes included any mention of SROs or school safety. That's a concern. I realize it starts at school board, but evidently there's some conversations to go outside of the minutes of this meeting. We have a law enforcement officer in the city now that is requested to apply for 2 grants over the last 5 years, and were denied both by his supervisor because he said that it's not the right time for city council. City council will not support it. He didn't say school board, he said city council. I hope you don't view what I'm saying too negatively, but I think as parents we all have an obligation, first and foremost, to educate our children, second, to protect our children, third is to hold them accountable. The same goes for school board, our government, and our city council. I can't think of anything that's more important than protecting my children. I think the last thing you want is me going to school with them every day. A week ago Tuesday, all three of my children, before 10 a.m., sent me a